Hello and welcome to Transformation Now. Hi, I'm Rita, rocker, speaker, author, trainer with SoaringHigher.rocks. I welcome you back again today. We've been talking a lot about success, moving forward, attitudes, and all kinds of things to help us grow, not to let go of our hopes and our dreams and pursuing our passions. Like I mentioned last time, my book is almost ready called Miracle in Your Mirror, Pursuing Your Passion at Any Age. And so this also applies to what I'll be talking about today, which is job seeking. Now, I've done a lot of programs in the past for groups that people, I would say basically over 45, especially over 50, where they were downsized from their companies. Sometimes it's legitimate. A lot of times there's a lot of reasons why it wasn't a legitimate downsizing. It happens a lot. And so a lot of times when people are more mature, as well as younger ones, and maybe they haven't had the opportunity for the educational programs that other people have, they maybe aren't quite sure what to do with themselves as far as getting back out into the working world where people seek them out, they want them on their team, and you probably will notice too, a lot of times, especially in retail places, but I've also seen in doctors' offices and places, a lot of the mature baby boomers are back in the workforce. Maybe they retired, and just because of financial issues and everything, it's not working. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about things that smart job seekers do. And so a lot of times we think, well, I'm too old now, or I can't compete with these people because of their money, their education, and yada, yada, yada. And that is not at all true. I think a lot of companies are seeing that even the mature people have so much experience. And I'm not touting that only, we all do. And we all have a lot of experiences and a lot of talents. Some people know that, some people have been told they didn't. But again, we go forward and we do mainly what's in our heart. And those are gifts that God has given us to use in any industry. And so we think about that. And so some of the details, the things that I wrote here, that I got here, were smart things that job seekers do. And these could apply to other opportunities besides just that job. We want a career, we want something that we like to do, that we want to do. When I was working in staffing and recruiting, I was very careful in matching people to companies, not only by the education that was required or requested, and also about the amount of job experience they had, but I said, you know what? Culture is also very important. And a lot of people weren't thinking about culture when they would match people to the companies. A culture is a lot of it, because if a person is very shy, very quiet, very reserved, and they would be working at a company that's really outgoing, boisterous people, maybe they're in some sort of, outside or a position where there's a lot of activity, then that's probably not going to work for them unless they're in, say, an accounting area that's quiet at the back, something like that. And again, like if someone is, kind of flamboyant, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I mean, they love dressing fun, they have a lot of fun, they're very outgoing, all of those things. Are they going to want to work in a company that is very quiet? Like, think of a company like an accounting firm. I worked with some architects and engineers after I had worked at a chamber of commerce where I was the project manager, and I was doing all kinds of activities all the time, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And then I was working for the, awesome people, but I was sitting in an office all day, every day, working on things and being on the computer, looking at a wall, and I thought I was going to lose it. And so culture is everything. You have to be also in a place where you are comfortable, where you fit in personality-wise and every other wise as far as you are concerned with the type of company. So you also want to think of culture just as much as you want to think of skills, abilities, and all those other good things. So here are some tips that I hope will help you. Realize a potential job lead could be anywhere. And again, job leads especially, most people like to use LinkedIn nowadays because you can post a resume or 2 resumes. Have 2 or 3 resumes if you need. One could be more like on public relations and that type of work, or it could be on a human resources as something else that maybe you did, or training. I've actually had 3 resumes that had each one of those areas, and they're basically pretty much the same resume, but the thing that you're focusing on for this particular company is what you have at the top. And maybe your goal at the top will change a little bit. You could even kind of, redo the same one. But just if you have 2 or 3 areas that you're gifted in, that you're good in, I'd say have 2 or 3 resumes. Make it all pretty much the same to show all of your work experience and all of your knowledge and whatever training programs, education you have. But always, if it's a particular type of company looking for one particular area the most, make sure you always put that on the top. Make sure that, and I'll talk a minute more about keywords, that you have the keywords in there that they're actually looking for, because that's really important. So, but let other people know about you seeking opportunities, and say you want to share your knowledge. Let people know that you are really skilled in a particular area and you're really looking to help other people with your products or your services or your contributions, whatever they may be. There's another one called Alignable. Besides LinkedIn, I've seen people on LinkedIn that they go to groups that have the same skills and abilities and talents that they are, and they join those groups so they can get in on those particular conversations. And then the ones who really want to get noticed will add articles, or they'll look at articles and make a contribution themselves. Like lately, I've been forwarding a lot of other people's comments out, and they've been getting a lot of recognition because it's things that I'm interested in, and I know other people will be interested, but it still gets you out there and it gets you in front of people. So even if you don't feel like you have a whole lot to share, which you do, but if you don't feel comfortable at first, go on there, start looking at things, and start looking at their job boards, because LinkedIn has a lot of job board information too, and start sharing that. As you start connecting with other people, start sharing that, and you'll start getting recognized, and people will want to friend you, and then you can build up a network that way too. So it's not that you always have to go to some event somewhere to network in person. There's so much that you can do through places like LinkedIn and Alignable, even Facebook a lot of times, Instagram. So just get on some of those and start focusing on how you can connect with other people and contribute your thoughts and ideas. And that will really help to build up a network with, like I said, not having to go out and do a lot of things if you're not comfortable with that. Surf the job boards for more options, and yes, that's true. And they're gold mines for different things. You may look up one company and then all of a sudden something else pops into your mind that would help you find a job with another company, because you're doing a lot of research before you actually try to get in there and get that particular job. Because I've looked at some before where it's like, oh yeah, I'd really love to do this. Like, well, when I looked up on their website, or maybe talked to other people, found comments, Google them, find out what's going on, it's like, maybe not. And so think about that. And, you can really see a lot that way. And again, with your resumes, make sure you're patterning your resume after what they are looking for, not necessarily what you want, okay? Now, the third one is put adequate time and effort into your applications. And that is really, really important too. I do professional resumes, and I've taken people that were in one industry, like a farmer who needed to get out of farming. He just didn't want to do it anymore. Physically, he wasn't able to. And so I said, well, how about, I started asking him questions. So you did your own purchasing, right? Okay, so we talked about his purchasing experience. And your agricultural skills, yeah, so he told me about those. And I said, and did you do your own, like your book work, your accounting, all of that? And he said yes. So I asked him questions about every part of farming that he did, marketing. And so what I did was I took a farmer's work history, which in itself would be very hard to get into a different line of work or switch from farming to working for a company. But I did, and it really worked because we took every skill and experience that he had and made it into a marketable resume, and he got a very successful job working for an agricultural company where he had good pay, good benefits, everything else, but he didn't start out that way. He started out in farming. So you can do that. You can pull all your gifts and your abilities from what you did into something completely different. I worked with a lady who, scientist, she worked with animal products, pet products, but all she did all day was like testing and medical and, you know, all of those things that had to do with animal products. And she was going nuts because she was just in a little, you know, area where she's got her test tubes and all this kind of thing. And so I worked with her and took all those skills that she had, and then we worked it into where she could be like a rep for the company, where she could go out and actually meet other people and do the sales. She was shy, so that was hard. We had to work with her on that. But she saw her skills and abilities and how they could transfer over to something else where she would get out of the lab that she was in. And then I remember working with military. You know, military is a whole different life than civilian life. And I said, if you take all these military terms and try to put it into a civilian resume, they're not going to understand. They won't understand. I mean, I heard some negative comments from people before. Oh no, they're just in a different world. I'm not interested in hiring someone like that. And I thought these are the most dedicated, the most controlled, the most reliable, respectful people you could ever find and have on your team. So we would transfer one thing to another, all the duties they did, but put it in civilian language in whatever area, whether it was a technical, whether it was trainer, a support position, whatever it was. And that really helped them so that when people were looking at their resumes and talking to them, they wouldn't be confused as to, well, what does this mean? So that's really, really helpful too. Another one I helped with, and I'm just giving you ideas here so you don't think, oh gosh, I'm stuck in this. As he was a professor at a college here in Omaha, and he had a 9-page curriculum vitae. No one is going to take the time to read a 9-page curriculum vitae or resume. They just won't. They make their decision in the first few minutes. And if they're run through a machine, like a lot of the bigger companies use now, if they don't pick up keywords on one page, usually, then it gets tossed out anyway. So I was able to get 9 pages down to 3, which is still a little bit too many, but we got it all the way funneled down to 3 pages for his curriculum vitae. He said, I want out of the educational system. I want to go into the corporate world. Did he have enough experience in a whole lot of areas? Absolutely he did. But the thing was, he just, you know, it was too much. So then we worked on his resume, or his cover letter. And so he made a comment in there, and it was a little too fluffy, and I kept trying to straighten it out and to be a little more professional for the corporate world. And so then he had to say, you know, what his hobbies were, and he loved to frolic on the beach. He said that. And I thought, good grief. I said, we cannot put that in there because they're going to see frolic on the beach and they're immediately going to, nope. Because that sounded like he wasn't really serious about his job, and why would you say that in the first place? You never say personal things like that on a resume or a cover letter or even at an interview unless that topic comes up because of that person that's interviewing you is in that, interested in that area. And so it's like, well, he refused. And then he had paid me down payment and he skipped out on the whole thing, and I could never, I don't know what happened to him. So there again, you have to be very careful. But his attitude was, no, I'm going to do the way you know, he's probably still in, I don't know where he is now. I mean, I don't know if he's still teaching, what he's doing. So there again, we have to be very careful about what we're doing. But we can take what we've done, that's my whole point, and turn it around into services, products, knowledge, experience that can go into an entirely different mode of work, career, if you really want it to and really work on it. So think about that too. That's very, very important to put the time into it and make sure that it's all good. As far as everybody's in an instant world now, And I remember this was even back a few years ago before it was quite as instant as it is now. And a large recruiting company here had asked me to come in and do some training, a day's worth of training for all of their employees, because they were sending out, say, a letter, mostly through emails now, to companies, but they were writing them like they were texting a friend. They didn't capitalize the first letter, the first word of every sentence. They ran everything together. They didn't talk professionally in their emails. And, they were going to directors, vice presidents, managers, and human resources and stuff. And they said, we can't allow our employees to keep doing this. It's a bad image for us, like we have a very unprofessional team. So I worked with them on their writing and their, a lot on the communication skills, because verbal, nonverbal, and written, all three are extremely, extremely important. And so, and answering the phone, sometimes people would be very unprofessional on the phone. I remember a long time ago when I worked at the Labor Department, and this was before my mentor and the lady that I did modeling for and trained for, she called me at the Department of Labor one day, and I just said, Carlson's office. That was the name of my boss, was Mr. Carlson. He was the executive there. She says, boy, you sound so unprofessional. And at first I was a little bit offended, like, well, okay, whatever. And then I started listening to myself. I thought, oh my gosh, she's right. That sounded very unprofessional. I didn't even say the word Mr. before Carlson. And so I realized that I swallowed my pride, and I thought, you know what, that is not good. And so again, we can give off so many opinions about us by what we say, how we do it, what we put on our resumes, how we communicate with people. And so I always think about that and put in your time, think about what you want, and go from there. So back to the communications, that was her point. I was not communicating well. And people, again, can communicate just as negatively by typos, things that are very poorly written. If you're not quite sure, I'd say it's a good idea anyway to have someone that you trust read over your resume or resumes and say, you know what, this is a little bit confusing. How about if you do this or do that? I mean, I loved doing that because I could really see, how that would help people to come off very professionally. Because if it's a phone call or if it's that resume and that application, that's the first thing somebody sees. It only takes a few seconds before they say, oh yeah, I'm going to read on, I'm going to listen, or nope, that goes in the circular file. So just think about that when you're comparing. And the job skills and the abilities to the requirements, if you don't have a certain amount of the requirements that they want, even though you may want it, you have to pass the list. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. So do your homework. Smart applicants, know something about the employers. I know there are people who have applied for jobs, because I used to interview them, and did they know actually anything about the company they were applying for? No. I want this job. Oh, okay. Why? What do you think of this company? What are some of the reasons that you would like to work for this company? And it'd be like, they didn't know, because they had not done any research on what kind of company they were even applying at. You always have to do that. And while you're at it, then find out what competition that company has. Who are the companies that are doing the same thing that they're competing with? Not only will that give you more knowledge about the company you're working for and what they're trying to do, but you may find a connection that looks even better. You may see, well, I didn't see a job request for this particular company, but I see they're a competitor of the one I'm applying for, and you know what? I'm going to go online. I'm going to send an application or resume to them regardless whether I see anything or not. You might get your foot into another door in another company just by researching the one you're saying you want to work for first, and also the culture as much as you can, and then see who their competitors are and see if maybe you can get a connection into one of those companies that you didn't even know was available until that time. That's the only time you should really use industry jargon, and what I mean by that is, a lot of times if we go into a networking event or something and we're using specific industry jargon or communication, comments that are only applicable to that particular industry, people out of that industry might not even know what you're referring to. But if it's a particular industry, come up with few keywords or industry jargon, things that is their language for their type of company, and throw those in there, because that can really help you as well to look like you're already connected and you understand the company, you understand the industry. Another one is employees do their homework too, and I know that for a fact, and that is amazing. Approximately 75% of companies require their recruiters to research job applicants online. So make sure that what they find is going to be to your benefit, because I know that a lot of times they will go into Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, which I'm not on, Twitter, whatever, and these recruiters will put in your name and they will look you up. And I heard of one that she had a really, really, really good opportunity with a really good company, but a recruiter found a picture of her on her Facebook post that she was able to see, and she had a low-cut blouse on with a beer can stuck right there. What did that do? Well, that threw her out, because that's not the kind of image that they wanted to portray to their clients, to their company. And that happens over and over again. So if you're looking for a serious job and you start looking at your posts and going, I don't know, if those are things that would cause negative feelings, impressions, delete them. That's really important, to delete them. And you think, well, I'll take them out of LinkedIn, but I'm going to leave them on Facebook. Okay. But if that doesn't fit the image, now some companies that would fit their image, okay, but other companies it won't. So it's depending on whatever company you're trying to get into, what's their image, because that makes all the difference in the world. So think about that, and Google your name. Just Google your name and see what pops up, because a lot of times we're surprised at what pops up when we Google our own name. And so do that. Sometimes it's kind of surprising. Make your value known quickly, and that might be, again, by how professional you are, because in that first 7 seconds, we're making all kinds of determinations and judgments about that person's self-image, their outlook on life, their educational levels, all kinds of things that say who they are, what they do, their future success. Sometimes if someone looks very unprofessional, they might be dismissed instantly, and yet they have maybe a master's or a PhD and are very successful. That happened when I saw one lady, and I thought, whoa, found out she was a very successful master's degree counselor. But you wouldn't have known that at first. Another one is to make known your value quickly, okay? And so in that first 7 seconds, we are judging people. We're determining their outlook on life, their economic and educational levels, their trustworthiness, their social position, their future success. It could be a lot of things that they're judging us on. And so we don't have very long, whether we're meeting in person, over a Zoom call, or even written material, to make that impression that causes them to want to pursue us further. And so think about that. And also, what can you do for me? That's their question to you. Sometimes people will tell them all about what they want, and then start asking about salary and promotions. And when they do that, the interviewer is going to go, you know what? I don't think this person cares at all about what they can do for us, and we're the ones that want to hire someone. It's like they're all, oh, gee, how much vacation? People literally ask these kind of things. And when they do, that just can really blow the whole thing. So always think you're focused on what you can do for them, not what they can do for you. Now, obviously, as you get further on down the line in the process, then you have to know what they can do for you to tell you whether you want the job or not. But when you're first in there and you're interviewing, it's all about getting them to want you to go forward in that process. So look and act professional. That's extremely important. Again, it depends on where you're going. If you're going into a very conservative company, they're going to want you to dress conservatively. If you're going into something that's in a media or sports or outgoing, they're going to want a whole different impression. But always look like the top of the group when you come in there and have your initial interview or whatever. They want to know how you're going to represent them okay? If you work there, how's this person going to represent me? Is this somebody I want on my team? Is this somebody I want to reflect, my company, my goals for my company? So think about them and show you that you want the job. That's very important, to be enthusiastic if you really do want the job, and you want to send them a thank you note afterwards if you really want the job. And those things are really important as well. One last quick little comment, when I worked at a large corporation and this guy was all qualified as far as the education and the work experience and everything else. However, he had little nubs on his collar where the fabric had worn, and so he had everything. He sent the interviewer flowers, he sent her a thank you note, and she said, I'm not hiring him because he lacks attention to detail. And all that was a few little nubs on his collar. And so you never know what somebody's thinking. Give them the best impression, be positive, extremely important to be positive, be professional, and go for it. And know that if this is something you want, keep going and be positive, and think emotional intelligence sometimes could be a lot more important than the IQ. So best wishes to you. See you next time.